I want to say hello to everyone today. I am very happy to be here with all of you. I am Petra Rassel, the head of coaching here at LeggUP. We are a professional development platform helping organizations to transform through development of their leaders and employees, more specifically through career coaching. You are joining us today for part 3 in our 6-part series, Thriving from Home. It is our mission to support leaders to rise to the challenge created by COVID-19, and to our webinar today, which is titled Mastering Focus. We will continue to support you here over the coming weeks every Thursday, and with topics like true empowerment, learning agility, team mindset, as they all pertain to how we can set ourselves up for success while we are working from home. Under these unprecedented circumstances we all find ourselves in today. It is my very true pleasure and distinct honor to introduce our expert on today's topic, Mastering Focus, LeggUP Coach, solutions-focused coach and teacher of mindfulness meditation in corporate settings for several decades, Millie Mabel. Millie helps leaders and their teams to access their higher wisdom through the power of focus. Using cutting-edge techniques from neuroscience, she supports people to move from fear to empowerment. I'm very excited about today's presentation. I want to also inspire all of you to use your chat box for questions. Millie will give you an opportunity to interact on this really beautiful presentation and inspiring presentation today. So feel free to respond and use the chat, and we will interact with you live while we're going through today's presentation. And without much further ado, I hand it over to you, Millie. And again, welcome at LeggUP and welcome to Thriving from Home.
Thank you, Petra. Okay, can you see me okay?
Yes. Yep.
We can. Hi, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Like a lot of people, I'm going through changes and I'm used to doing this in person. So this technology is all really new for me. I'm used to having a room of people. So I would love to have any questions you want in the chat. I think Petra's going to be monitoring that. It will help it feel a little less like a monologue. So first of all, I'd love to just know where you are logging in from today. If anyone wants to put that up. I'm in Colorado.
Yeah, feel free to put in the chat where you are joining from today.
Orange County, Spain, Madrid. Hey, a fellow European. Hi. I've lived in the US 10 years, so I have British and American citizenship just straight. Hi. Honolulu. I've lived in Hawaii before. How gorgeous. Maryland, Washington, DC, Norway. Wow. Switzerland.
Switzerland.
I love Boston. This is so lovely. Thank you for joining us. And, you know, we're all kind of in this really strange place that we find ourselves in right now. And hopefully this hour can be a place for us to kind of come together and bring the challenges that we have and learn some tools and techniques to support ourselves and the people around us through them. So Florida as well. Wow, love Florida. I wanted to invite you, first of all, to just, if you're willing to, just to kind of turn off phones. You know, if you are someone who has a lot of things, notifications on your screen most of the time, that might be something you need to do for your work or just your life in general. But I really want to invite you to just turn them off and take a minute to do that. We're going to have some experiences today. So rather than just it being a bunch of slides and me reading them to you, which you can get from a book, we're actually going to be doing some exercises. We're going to be doing just a couple of minutes of meditation and visualization. So you will just get more out of it if you're able to be fully present. And I say that knowing, of course, that a lot of people do have little kids at home, and of course they come first. So we're all just juggling and doing the best that we can. So first of all, I invite you to just take some deep breaths and really just take all of your attention away from everything around you. So it's as if for this moment, the room, the apartment or the house you're in, the town, just your awareness of that just goes, and all of your attention is on your breathing. just for a couple of minutes, all of your focus is on your breath. Become really aware of the places where your body touches the chair that you're sitting on. Maybe the soles of your feet are on the floor. Just really slowing down and having this time for yourself. There's a lot out there pulling on our attention. And we just want to make sure that we can fill up from within so that we can meet what's outside in a way that is as centered and strong as possible. So, go in and how are you feeling? Maybe some of you do that every day. Maybe it's been a while. Okay, so I'll invite you back, bringing your awareness into the space that you're currently in. I just want to check with Peter. Can you see that first slide, Peter?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm sure it's coming on.
Okay. Just trying to see sharing
So
my
screen share, yeah, share screen.
I think I'm doing a share screen. Thought I was doing that. Bear with me a moment, folks.
But I can tell from the chat, everybody's really relaxed, so.
I'm just wondering how I get, okay, now I can see the chat. I'm trying to do a screen share. When I press screen share in desktop and I go into the slides, then I can't see the chat. So.
Yes, you will not be able to see the chat.
Okay, so you guys.
There you go, there we are.
There you go. So you guys, can you see that screen, the slides full?
Yeah, and then if you just want to take it into presentation.
Presenter, yeah, presenter view. There, that, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, yay. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're going to cover today. What does it mean to master focus? Like, we all want to continue to do the best job we can in our professional life during this time. So we're going to be looking at being able to, where we can, where possible in these challenges, hone out of what's going on outside of us and just be really present to what's going on in the things we want to do with our work that day and so on. How do our thoughts directly impact the immune system? What is neuroplasticity and how can you use it to enhance well-being? How can you move from feeling anxious and afraid to hopeful and empowered? Specific practices that you can do that enhance focus and actually pivot your life, they have mine, including visualization, mindfulness, and meditation. And practical action steps you can implement to support you and those impacted you by you, both at work and at home. So any questions so far? You're so welcome to feed them into the chat. Peter can let me know. Otherwise, let's dive in and think about what is the impact of the thoughts we think? What happens with that? So what we're thinking creates the emotions that we're feeling. So a lot of people aren't actually aware of that we feel an emotion and we think that somehow we're kind of hijacked emotionally from what somebody else is doing. And it's actually the thought that we are thinking that is generating that emotion within us. So then that emotion causes a physiological response. So something happens in our body, right? So when we feel love, for example, and safe and happy, usually our breathing really slows down, right? Our body posture opens, our voice maybe slows down. Our body basically mirrors the way that we're feeling inside. What's happening a lot at the moment is because there's so much around that is really overwhelming, and this is quite an unprecedented situation. All of us, most of us, are feeling a lot of fear, anxiety, and so our bodies are responding differently. So what we're going to look at today is, there's so many things that we can't control that are going on outside of us, but we're going to look at the pockets that we can control and how we can try and set ourselves up for success, or at least in terms of what that means to us, like really being able to focus professionally, being able to feel calm as possible, being able to be supportive of the people around us. So this quote by Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian independence leader, "You can chain me, you can torture me, you can even destroy this body, but you will never imprison my mind." He was actually imprisoned 10 times for a total of about 7 years, almost 7 years. And he was famous for his non-violent approach. So he was never violent towards anybody else. He wanted political change through being peaceful around it. But he realized that whatever was going on around him, nobody could make him think something. He controlled the way that he thought, right? And it's really important for us to remember that, because it can feel like we're sort of in a powerless position of things are happening and kind of out of control of what's happening. And there's, new things going on every day. And there's so much of that that's inevitable that is going to be difficult for all of us. But I really want to look at today at what we can do to set ourselves up to be able to not just survive, but if we can thrive from home during this time. So I'd love to do a short exercise. We're not going to do it for, mega long time, but just to kind of have an experience of what we're going to talk about later. And I'll explain kind of what the brain's doing, why this is important, how this can be helpful. So I want to invite you to do something.
Really, while we're checking for the exercise, I'm just wondering if we could quickly just look at the presentation mode again, because we keep having all of your slides here on the screen. If you could go back up and just look at present, I think. Yeah, there we go.
That's not presenter mode. That's just the regular slideshow, but it's okay. Does that work?
That's perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. By the end of our lockdown, I'll have done a bunch of these and I'll be like flying with them. But yeah, thank you for bearing with me. So there we go. Can you all see a beach? Yes?
Beautiful. Okay. Yes.
Okay. So the person calling in from Hawaii is like, yeah, this is in my backyard, right? The rest of us is just salivating over this right now. So here's the exercise. I'd love to invite you to think about a memory that is really wonderful for you. Okay, so something, it could be recent, it could be 20 years ago, but a time when you felt really, really good. You felt safe, you felt well, you felt energized. If you can't think of anything, you could visualize something in the future, right? Memories and visualizations are formed in the same part of the brain. So you could use this beach, but really, really go deep into that experience. So once again, I invite you to take some deep breaths. Let everything kind of just zone out other than what's here right now. And really think about being there. If you're seeing yourself on a movie screen, as opposed to feeling and experiencing that, go really close up to that movie screen until you put yourself inside, right? So I want you to be really in it, like your physical body is in this place. If you're on the beach, You can feel the sand between your toes, right? So just to really get this picture clear in your mind of where you are and what you're doing. And this isn't anything you need to write in the chat or think about, just like you're really, really there. You're in this place. Who are you there with? Is anyone else with you? What are they saying? Are they saying anything, or are you just having a really lovely time on your own? What can you see that's around you? What's the weather like if you're outside? Is it night? Is it daytime? What can you hear? Are you touching anything? Are your feet walking on the grass or the sand? Become aware of how you're feeling when you're there. Aware in your body you experience that. Some of us really feel things in our gut, some of us in our heart. And really bask in this feeling, right? Just really savor that experience. If there's anything you want to remember from that scene, make a mental note of it. And that can be your anchor to come back. And then when you're ready, you just gently in your own time, bring yourself back to the current room where you're sitting. How are you feeling? That's something you can write in the chat. And
well, we already had some beautiful observations regarding self-reflection and, of course, a calming technique. This exercise being a calming technique, right? So you're calming your senses.
So this is something that literally they've done this in studies. Study after study has shown that when we spend even a couple of minutes, and 15 minutes is really powerful, but even if you spend a few minutes remembering something that feels really good to you, it lowers levels of stress hormones. There's some other things that happen with that I'm going to go into here. So that's something that you can remember for any time that you're feeling overwhelmed or you kind of just want to get back to yourself. Remember that thing that you remembered. I actually keep it like a library of positive memories, I call it. So I make lists sometimes when I'm going through stuff like we're all going through right now. And then any moment when I want to, I can just think about that thing, like opening a book at my favorite page or a movie at my favorite part of the favorite scene in a movie. And I'm there. And when we bring our senses in and we experience it as if we're standing in our physical bodies, it's really, really powerful.
And those are some of our strongest memories in general, right? Is how something made us feel. And that is really something we can retrieve and really relive in a lot of ways, right? Even from smells, like you said, all our senses are very strong in creating memories.
Yeah.
And it's this reflection on experience that happens in those moments, right? We have also commenting here from Spain, freedom. That generated a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to explain what is going on really within the brain and why that's really powerful to use. So we're going to look a little bit at the brain and you had a kind of a sneak preview of these slides. So I didn't on purpose choose a really kind of accurate scientific drawing of the brain, because I think a lot of us, I do anyway, they look like spaghetti to me, and then I start thinking like what part is what. And I just want to talk briefly about a few key parts of our brain, like what's happening during that exercise, why it feels good, and how we can use that to really enhance our focus and our ability to perform and do the things we need to do. So neuroplasticity literally means that the brain changes structurally according to the thoughts we think. So according to the way that we sort of give it data, it will change. The physical structure changes, and therefore how it functions changes as well. It used to be thought until a few decades ago that, you know, at childhood, your brain is fully formed by the first couple of years of your life. And whilst it's true that the most important and the fastest growth happens then, that's when the brain is most plastic, is most malleable to change. We now know that we can change it at any time, and that it does change according to the way that we think. So that's the first bit that I just want you to get, okay? There's two parts of the brain that we're going to look at, and the names don't even matter. But if you're interested in this stuff, there's, you know, loads of stuff online and libraries and stuff about it. But the amygdala is part of the limbic system. And the limbic system, from an evolutionary perspective, is the oldest part of the brain. Okay, it's kind of the first part that developed. It's around survival. So it was designed to keep us safe. So when we're back in hunter-gatherer societies, you know, we'd see the saber-toothed tiger, we have a fight or flight response. So the amygdala releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to make us literally move, like to give us energy in our body to go somewhere, to run or to fight, okay? We actually have two amygdalas. They're either side of the brain, they're kind of behind the eyes and the optical nerve. So whenever we feel fear, these tiny things, the amygdala, are producing these kind of stress hormones. It's like a chemical cocktail that happens in the body. And we're all really aware of what those symptoms are, right? Our heart rate gets really fast. We might suddenly start sweating a bunch. Our speech maybe speeds up. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens when we're stressed, right? So that's the first thing. The second part that I want to talk about is what we really need to be able to master focus, and it's the prefrontal cortex, and that's in the sort of frontal lobe of the brain, and it's really the executive center of the brain. So that's where our rational mind comes in. It developed much later in humans, and it allows us to think clearly. It moderates our social behavior. So we really want that part to be active so that we can think clearly, we can make good decisions, especially in the kind of, you know, crisis situation that's happening right now. So here's the challenge. There is a neural circuit that goes between them, right? And because our brains do develop so much when we're younger, some people will have more traffic on that highway than others, right? So people who have very stressful early lives, that connection tends to be weaker anyway, but we can change it. We can do things later in life, whatever your early life was like. But basically when we feel fear, the amygdala sounds the alarm. There's something stressful going on. And it will send a little message to the prefrontal cortex, which then evaluates, is that fear rational, right? The challenge is that once the amygdala gets very activated, that little pathway between them of communication shuts down completely. So what that means is that when we are in a fear state, when we're really triggered, we literally cannot access the part of our brain that is rational, that would give us the insights that we need to be able to understand what's happening and to be able to make rational decisions. So most of us have had at some point in our lives an argument or two where we've been really triggered. And maybe it's with a partner or someone we care about or something that's happening at work. And when we're triggered and we're upset, it takes a minimum of 10 minutes for the physiological effects of that to calm down, right? If you see animals, if you ever see animals when they have a fight, or you watch wildlife programs, they flap, like ducks will flap their wings, right? They're trying to kind of clear their energy field. It's like, you know, whoa, I just want to get out of that. That was really stressful, right? And in us humans, it takes a minimum of 10 minutes to actually calm that fear center down. So that's why it's completely pointless when, you know, you and somebody else are arguing and you're both totally triggered, both totally stressed out. You're kind of almost screaming at each other, and neither of you can access the rational part of your brains. Okay, so the really important piece I wanted to bring in here, and why I'm explaining this, is that most of us associate the occurrence of adrenaline with extreme sports like skydiving, or like, you know, teenagers or young kids in their 20s doing stuff, right, that creates adrenaline. But the thoughts we think can create exactly the same stress response. Okay, so that when you are thinking something that is generating fear, you will be releasing adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones that are really going to impact your ability to be able to access the part of your brain that's rational, that can think through things, that can perform right at work. And the thing about adrenaline is that it's actually shown to be quite addictive. So it could be described a little as like the kid in the candy store kind of thing. Like there's a part of us that feels quite alive when we're, you know, experiencing adrenaline, right? And we'll talk about this kind of more as we're going through, but if there's this constant bombardment, isn't there, of news right now, and things that are going on around us, and we want to be informed. And as humans, we want connection. So we're often logging on to the news cycle or things coming up around us to find out what's going on and maybe connect. But if we're doing that too often, it's keeping us in quite a hypervigilant state, where that limbic system, that, you know, primitive part of the brain that's wired for survival, is constantly on alert. And it can become addictive. It's like, oh, we're reaching for the next thing, and you know, I feel stress thinking about it, and my heart rate's, you know, going up or whatever. And it can become quite an addictive cycle. So the more we experience fear, the greater the amygdala actually grows. So it grows larger in proportion to how much we're actually experiencing fear. Additionally, it's such a challenging situation right now because we want to feel well. We want our immune systems to be functioning at their best, right? But the stress of the situation is, a certain amount of it is inevitable. We're all living with that. But if we're allowing ourselves to, you know, to watch so much of the news and to see so much of that on a cycle, we're generating more stress in our bodies. Stress in the immune system is something I want to touch on with that. So it's actually been shown to be corrosive to the cells of the immune system, like the white blood cells that we need to be able to fight any infection that we get. And that's the opposite to what we want. There was a doctor called Bruce Lipton who wrote a book, The Biology of Belief. He actually placed human cells in a culture that contained adrenaline and cortisol, stress hormones, and the cells shriveled up, okay? And when he placed human cells in oxytocin and growth hormone, oxytocin we think of as the love hormone, bonding hormone. We'll talk about it later, more detail. Growth hormone we produce naturally. The pituitary gland produces it, especially when we get enough sleep, things like that. When he put these human cells in that culture, they thrived. And our body is made up of trillions of cells. So we really just want to think about the line between being informed, you know, to be responsible citizens, to be informed, like what's going on around us, how can I help people, how can I play my part in this, versus are we getting caught up in what everything else is going on around us. I would love to be able to see the chat because I'm seeing stuff popping up, but I can't actually access it on this screen. So I don't know if there's anything, Peter, that you'd love to share that people have said.
We're actually, we're having people very zoomed in on what you're sharing. I'm right now really curious to see where this is leading us into. I know you got a lot of other examples that you're getting ready to share. So curious to see that.
Okay, so it's relevant because there's a lot of fear around in our environments today. So here's a path through this little woodland, right? This little forest. And the thoughts we think, the more we think them, the brain is looking for a familiar pattern, right? So the more I think a certain thought, it becomes familiar. It's easier for me to think it the next time. That's exactly what happens if we're going through this forest, right? If I was walking through this woodland, I would naturally take the path that is shown on the photograph in the middle, right? If I want to take a path to the left of that or the right of that, it's going to take a bit more effort, okay? Because I'd have to, you know, like be treading on whether it's weeds or brush or whatever. And it takes a little bit more effort to do that. So the things that we're thinking in a habitual way become like the go-to response. The brain's looking for the familiar pathway. Kind of like if you've ever, you're driving somewhere familiar and you move house and you find at the end of your work day that you've driven back to your old house instead of where you're going to because you're on autopilot, right? So we can do this a lot with our minds, and we want to kind of nudge our minds towards feeling good and not feeding the thoughts that will generate more fear, because momentum will build up and it will be just easier and easier to keep thinking those thoughts. So there's one more concept that I want to just mention here of mirror neurons. Okay, so many of you may know that already. When I did my coach training back in 2013, I was really shocked actually to learn that my particular coach training, they didn't want us to use cameras when we were coaching. And the reason was that if I was talking to a client and they were sort of sharing something, it was not seen as optimal for the coach to be diving in on a level of empathy. And if we watch them and we're watching what somebody's going through and their experience and we're watching it, what happens in the brain is that the same emotions are triggered within us, like we're a mirror. So whatever they're feeling, we start feeling. And my particular coach training, the idea was like we hold space for people in a slightly different way. So as someone who was very empathic, I found that quite odd at the beginning. And there's, of course, many ways of coaching, right? And I won't always do that. It depends on kind of who I'm coaching and what the subject is. But just to become aware that if you are watching, there's some really distressing things happening in the world right now. And if you're watching them on a really regular basis and you're watching stories of people sharing their experiences that are quite distressing, as you're watching that, you too will start vibrationally feeling the same way that they're feeling, okay? And that's kind of become a normal. It's just seeing that, you know, that's what people do. Like we watch the news every day, somebody's going through something, somehow we think that we're helping if we experience everything they're feeling as they're feeling it. And we're all slightly different. Some of us are more empathic than others. Some of us are more impacted than others. But be aware that if you're watching things like on a loop and there's a lot of stress around that, you're going to be picking that up too, right? So just you really, really want to think, how much do I need to be informed? And how much do I want to actually be like setting my day up before being bombarded by like what's around me? So what are some things we can do instead? Okay. And here are some questions that are not, you may not have the answers now, but just to think about for later. Like, how can you set the focus for your day and your inner state before you connect with other people? When do you get deregulated or triggered? Like, get really, really tuned into when are the times that you feel off center? Like, what are the things that do that? What are the kind of conversations? What are the topics? And what helps you feel good? And do you feel better or do you feel worse after scrolling social media, or does it change? I was looking at a study of young people who had mental health challenges in the UK, and about a third of them felt that social media really helped them, and exactly the same percentage felt that it was very negative for them. It had a very negative consequence for them. So that's just about like really thinking, how do I feel doing what I'm doing? And do I want to restructure my day, just at least during the current crisis that's going on? You know, if you usually go to bed and you're reading an iPad and you get notifications popping up, usually that's fine because they're just friends connecting with you. Maybe at the moment it's kind of news alerts that are really sort of stressful. So just some awareness to build within yourself. If we can, you know, often we kind of go out trying to find something or someone to help us feel a certain way. But if we're really off center, then it can be hard to do that because we're connecting from a place where we don't feel good in the first place. And then with everything going on, then we don't necessarily feel good as we're going through our day. So just be really mindful, like, you know, is alcohol helping you? Like, if it's one drink and it's helping you relax, maybe that's different to if it's a lot and it's becoming like a thing that you're doing a lot more than normal. Like, just really tuning into like what you're putting in your body in terms of substances and thoughts and practices that are going to help you, and what is actually hindering for you. Meditation, I just want to read a few words from Arianna Huffington, who she wrote this book, Thrive, and it's interesting. She quoted a 17th century mathematician who said, you know, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And on her website, Thrive Global, she writes, meditation literally changes us at a genetic level. Researchers at Massachusetts General Hospital, Beth Israel Medical Center, and Harvard Medical School found that the relaxation response, the state of calm produced by meditation, yoga, and breathing exercises, actually switches on genes that are related to augmenting our immune systems, reducing inflammation, and fighting a range of conditions from arthritis to blood pressure to diabetes. So meditation in its simplest form, like the first time I tried to meditate, I was at a rock concert. I was 16, and it was actually like a festival where we all camped for 4 or 5 days. And for some reason, I just wanted to go in this meditation tent. And I kind of found it interesting as a concept, and something drew me there. Like, I wanted to do it. But that was just like a one-off. I felt really peaceful. I didn't think about it again. And then a few years later, I was in India, and I met some people traveling there, and they taught me some basics of meditation. And at the beginning, I was saying, like, I'm really not someone who can meditate. Like, I'm always reading a bunch of books at once, and my brain doesn't shut off easily. And they were saying, this is something that is actually really helpful. So it took me a while. And at the beginning, the first time I tried it, I had so many thoughts going around my head. And someone said to me, there's no such thing as a bad meditation. And that was really helpful. And when I kept doing it, what I realized that compounded over time is that I felt this sense where I started feeling calmer about things. And I was more aware of the thoughts I was thinking. And I was less inclined to just like rush from one thing to the next. Like, I would take my time in between them and be able to like be fully present with what I was doing more. And I remember I was sharing the story with Peter just when we were planning this webinar. And one time when I was in my 20s teaching meditation, somebody was explaining and describing this person who was very calm to somebody else in the class, and she waved her hands towards me and she said, she's just like Millie. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm really not like that at all. But I realized over time I'd become more like that. And you know, now years later, I'm much more like that than I was, because it has changed the structures in my brain. It's made me able to respond in a different way rather than react more of the time. And I also wanted to add here that this is not about, like, you know, pretending we're enlightened and being like holier than thou and perfect and stuff. Like, I'm not at all, right? It's just that this is a practice that I found really life-changing and that's helped me, and that's helped a lot of my clients. So I know with me, I have a pretty sensitive nervous system. So in my own life, I know that if I woke up and I straight away, you know, turned on things and got kind of very bombarded by messages happening around the world, I would have a very different day in terms of my productivity and my focus than if I kind of try and set the day first, like set myself first before the external stuff comes in. So I just wanted to put that out as a concept that, you know, our days being productive and being able to focus really happen more through design than default, right? It's an intention that goes into that.
I'm going to share a few comments, Millie, that we keep coming in from the chat box. We had here, in terms of what really supports us, you know, to shift our attention and build our focus versus distracts or triggering us. It's the physical connection to the world. It's the walk in nature. It's the swim in the ocean or yoga, to your point that you already made. And then it's tuning and into helping and reaching out to others, which for one of our members here in the audience is that what helps take the focus off of self. I thought that was a very interesting comment, right?
That's really lovely. Thank you.
And we had golf, so sports or activities where you're athletic, but you're also kind of, it's like a mind athleticism too, right?
I've just figured out how to access the chat. There we go. Can you see my screen without the chat still picture?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, yay. Now I can see you all. So I just wanted to give you literally like a 1 minute example of meditation, because there's so many ways of doing it, right? You can do guided meditations, whatever. And if this is something you do all the time, it will be just really lovely and easy and relaxing. But I have a stopwatch, and I would love to just guide you into literally 1 minute of just tuning into your breathing. That's as simple as it can be. So when we start, there's a bunch of thoughts that are going through our minds, right? And it's not about judging that or thinking we're not doing a good job. It's just like we don't need to follow them. We get to a point where we're watching them, and then we get to a point now where I just go into meditation. It's just still and quiet, and I don't know where I'd be without it, really. So this is the kind of the last little experiential thing we're going to do together. So I'm just going to invite you one more time to take some deep breaths, and just if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, if that's safe to do, if you're not taking care of, you know, little kids or animals around you, and just tune in for a really short time on your breathing, and just bring all of your attention onto your breath, onto the rising and the falling of your breath, the inhale, the exhale. Your abdomen rising as the breath comes in. Just 20 more seconds, focusing on your breathing. And when you're ready, just opening your eyes and bringing your awareness back into your current reality. I use an app called Insight Timer. There's a free version, and I simply just use it for the chimes, by the way, because I found that regular alarms just are too like a jarring for my nervous system when I come out of a meditation. So there's different ways of doing it, but you could just start with 1 minute. You could start with 3 minutes, build up to 5 or 15, 20, whatever you like. But I invite you to see if you even just spend 3 minutes in your day doing that, like how different your day can go. Because for me, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't tried it. So that's one little exercise. We're going to move on. There we go. So the last practice I want to share with you is mindfulness. And, you know, we can use, like, I mean, it's great to use visualizations and past memories if they're really positive, right? And we feel good when we're experiencing them. But a lot of our stress and trauma, when we become conscious of what's going on in our brain, it's two things. We're either looking back in the past and there's some traumatic event and we're running over it, right? An argument we've had or something, we're really stressed about it, or we're worried about something in the future. So what will immediately bring us out of this is if we're just present in our present. So we're really aware of our surroundings and who we're with. And, you know, if there's an opportunity during this interesting time where we're kind of all sort of forced to be in our homes more than normal, it would be really powerful if we could look at our lives and how we're living them in terms of our focus, right? And become more mindful and more present. So studies show that we don't really multitask, right? Our brain is just flitting back from thing to thing. And it's funny, whenever I give my phone number to a new friend, I usually try and remember to say, like, I won't necessarily text you back straight away, because if I'm having coffee with someone or I'm in a meeting, I personally prefer to just wait until that's done, or I have a spot in the afternoon when that's like a clear moment in my schedule. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, the word mindfulness was first used in the turn of just around the beginning of the 1900s. And John Kabat-Zinn, who's a writer who set up a mindfulness clinic in the medicine school at the University of Massachusetts, noticed that the word mind and heart in Asia, in Asian languages, and these practices come from the East originally, are really the same word. So I wanted to check that out with some people I know who speak those languages. And a dear friend who's a Chinese medical doctor shared with me that for them, the heart system, it really governs the mind. So the word is a little misleading because we're not trying to be full with our minds. It's more about an expansiveness, but I think it's better almost translated as like a heart-centeredness. Like, how can we be more present in our present? Okay. And really simple practices of that could be, you know, walking through a doorway and just saying door as you're walking through, which when I first started doing was so weird. It's not like I walk around my house doing that, but I tried it, you know, years ago when I first learned this stuff for a few days. And I realized how much I was just in this like monkey mind of thoughts that were unconscious. I didn't, you know, I wasn't aware of half of what was happening. And it was just like these random thoughts were thinking me instead of me choosing them. So I started doing it. And like, you know, if I was washing up, instead of wishing I was doing something else, like, oh, I'm just really present. I'm washing up right now, or I'm brushing my teeth, or it's just like bringing this practice of I'm here now. And this is where my attention is right now. I'm 100% doing this thing, right? Or I'm 100% with this person, instead of trying to do a bunch of things at once. And that is something as well that I found really, really calming on the nervous system. It helps the immune system, and it really, really helps people to focus. Not just me, but I've worked with like a ton of people who have really found this too, and they've incorporated this. So moving on to...
Really, if I could just ask you one more time, we had a few questions in the audience regarding the app you mentioned, and
Yeah.
I'll try to put that in the chat. What was the name of it again? Was it Insight Timer?
Insight Timer. I'm going to see if I can just call it up for you and show you a picture. Yeah, I mean, it's like the top, it's called Insight Timer.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a beautiful bowl, like a Tibetan bowl, and the chime that I choose when I come in and out of meditation is that chime. So it's very, very gentle. right? I can even see if I could start it for you because I do this all the time. And, so it's just a very, very gentle bowl, right? And I time that starts.
And that like gets you jumping off your mattress in the morning.
Right, yeah, I just grab it. I mean, for me, I just like brush my teeth and use the bathroom and just go straight into it. And it really helps. And days when I don't, you know, I'm like, I have to say this to people, like I am really not any different from anyone else. Like I just do these practices and they help me so, so much. So yeah, that's been really powerful for me. And I do it first thing in the morning. And if I don't, I come back to it later in the day. I usually only meditate about 20 minutes in the morning, but I find when I'm more stressed, like there's more stress around right now, I'll sometimes do it longer or I'll do it again later. So like the more crazy stuff is going on in the world or my mind, the more I need it, right? And if I'm having a really relaxed time on vacation, I'm kind of set. But I just want to talk about massage briefly. Or massage, as you would say in North America. Touch is really important for managing our levels of stress. So it produces like really lovely hormones like oxytocin, right? Bonding hormone. If you live with somebody else, you can massage each other. And it doesn't matter if you don't have any training. There's a bunch of videos you can find on YouTube and places. But if you live on your own as well, it's really good to know that just moving the skin, like just simply doing this, will actually really generate that oxytocin, and that will improve your immune system. Okay, and anything that is producing oxytocin and is helping your immune system, you feel good. That means you shut off that fear center of your brain for the time being. You can access the executive center of your brain where you're thinking. So it's, you know, people wouldn't necessarily think of it as in a seminar on, you know, managing focus or mastering focus, but it's really powerful. So.
Well, there are even some essential oils, right? When we talk about aromatherapy in combination with massage or meditation even, that would support you to really find that place, right? And create focus for yourself, yeah.
I do, absolutely. I use the grounding ones like cedarwood, and I love, you know, jojoba and, you know, lavender is great. Lavender helps you sleep, obviously. So, you know, just a couple of last things to go through, like anything else that you can do that supports you in feeling resourceful, right? So that we're less likely to succumb to bobbing around to what's outside. We're like, there is that, of course, for all of us, but what can we do? You know, routine is great. And I have to say, I'm not the best at it, but when I do go to bed and get up at the same time every day, I am more productive and I do sleep better. And I don't know, I have a lot of days, I know I'm not the only one recently, where we're like, is it Monday or Tuesday? Like, you know, because the things that usually punctuate our week, like I go to a dance class Tuesday or whatever, just aren't there right now. But whatever we can do that helps us to feel a sense of, you know, safety, things are the same, right? We all need a mixture of sameness, things that are the same and things that are different, right? And our personalities really show like which side we're more predominantly on. Some people just are very spontaneous. Some people want a lot of routine in their lives. But when there's a lot of uncertainty around, it's good for all of us to find the places where we feel more, you know, that there's some things that are familiar and there's some things that are the same. And, you know, kids, you know, thrive off routine. So when we're in states of shock, it can be really helpful to do that more. Good day starts with good sleep the night before. I'm working with people who have had like sleep issues, like I was saying, and if they never had them before and now they have sleep issues. There's lots of programs on technology. Flux is one that I use on my computer that if you're looking at a screen or a phone, they will block out blue light. Blue light will stop the production or hinder the production of melatonin, which we need to sleep, right? So up until electricity in the last century, then we would, you know, we had the circadian rhythm, we would be more or less going to bed early, and now, of course, we can be up all the time. So something super simple. I mean, I have light bulbs in my bedroom that don't have blue light in, but really simple glasses, like orange glasses like these, will block out blue light, right? They look kind of dorky, but I don't care. But if you read these, I don't use them very often, but if I have a sleep issue and I put them on before I go to bed, I will sleep so much better. So if you're having sleep issues and you're watching, you know, movies or stuff really late at night, they're, you know, 10, 15 bucks on Amazon or something. Noise, right? Noise reduction headphones. I have now realized that I need to choose neighbors based on their taste of music, because I have bluegrass one side and rap the other, right? So I use these. Again, that they're kind of, I can't hear a thing with them on. And I wouldn't want to wear them all the time. But the point is just to start thinking like, you know, what could I do that will change my environment and make this a bit better, right? Most of us are, well, all of us are home, almost all of us are home, depending on where you live in the world. And we just want to think about that, like how we can set ourselves up to thrive in this time instead of just, you know, being bobbed about by other stuff. So looking at the last slide, you can cultivate awareness on how you're feeling in any moment, right? And by becoming aware of what you're thinking, and meditation will help you with that, and mindfulness will help you with that. And you can incrementally shift this emotion by changing focus. So I'm saying incrementally because if you're feeling really crappy, then you're not likely to feel elated and amazing the next moment, but you can nudge yourself towards there. And we looked at those practices, visualization, mindfulness, meditation, that can support you. Remember, mindfulness is self-compassion, so to be kind to yourself. And you can cultivate this daily, you can cultivate daily or regular practices to empower you through this time of transition. A playwright I love from the 50s, an Irish playwright, Samuel Beckett, said that habit is a great deadener. And I think that's so powerful because we do these things on autopilot and we sometimes don't even think why we're still doing them. And maybe the things we did served us earlier, or maybe they served us before this time. But I just invite you to really look at your day and your structure and your home around you and like, what could be different? If we're doing this for another few weeks or a few months or whatever, what could be different that we can do that will put us slightly more in the driving seat, right? What one takeaway from today could you implement? And how can you use this time for growth, right? If you wanted to do one thing, like, who do you need to be to do that? How would you value doing that? Who else could benefit around you? And yeah, looking back, like we're all kind of getting through it. And is there any way that you could use it for growth? Which doesn't mean that the stuff that's happening is what we'd want or that it's easy, but if there's any way that you could come through it, you know, still being kind to yourself. We don't have to be like heroes every day, but just maybe it's even like how you create safety. Maybe if you're feeling stressed, it's just surrendering and taking a nap in the afternoon, like whatever it is for you, but just supporting yourself to use this time in some way that, you know, you can be kind to yourself, and whatever you do, just whatever little tweaks you make in your life, you know, being kind to you as you do them. And yeah, any other questions or comments? We're kind of running close to the end.
Yeah, we're getting to the top of the hour. We had one already responding with respect to an immediate takeaway is really that idea of using good memories when you're finding your place in a you know, state where you're somewhat bogged down by everything else that's going on. I think you touched on some really important points when it comes to the habits that we have, right? The kinds of routines that we can create, lifestyle choices we can make, right, to better support us in this particular situation that we're in, and things that we can bring forward, right, when we come out of it, maybe things that are going to be helpful in the long term for us to really zoom in more on what's out there that can really set ourselves up for success, you know, rather than getting us distracted and hindering success from happening. I want to really, in wrapping up here, thank you really for a beautiful presentation. I hope this was helpful for all of you. I want to remind you to join us again if you can next week. We will continue to support you here every Thursday. Our next webinar will be about true empowerment. And then we will continue with learning agility and cognitive agility, leading with complexity. And then our next topic is, will be team mindset. We'll have part 1 and 2 for that. I hope again that you found this helpful today. We will be excited to have you join us again next week. And again, really thank you for today's beautiful presentation. And we wish all of you guys a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.